All right, so I will now call to order the Senate meeting of November 30th, 2020. Would the Deputy Speaker please call the attendance?
Sure. Senator Arjen Arkin.
Present.
Senator Baker. Senator Belay. Senator Dillingham.
Here.
Senator Fegler.
Here.
Senator Hawk.
Here.
Senator Hathaway.
Here.
Senator Liang.
Here.
Senator Liverpool.
Here.
Senator Nadeem. Senator Chamgase. Senator Ramirez.
Here.
Senator Rogers.
Here.
Senator Sadi. Senator Salimi.
Here.
Senator Tulloch.
Here.
Senator Yoon.
Here.
12 present, 6 absent.
All right, no one leave, please. You can go ahead and sing the Genesee now. Full many fair and famous streams beneath the sun there be, yet more to us than any seems our own dear Genesee. We love her banks and stately falls, for to our minds they bring our dear old alma mater's halls, where sweetest memories cling. As flows the river gathering force along her steadfast way, may we along life's devious course grow stronger day by day, and may our hearts where'er we roam forever loyal be to our beloved college home beside the Genesee. All right, we're now going to move into a land acknowledgement. Would a senator like to read the land acknowledgement? Senator Salimi.
We would like to acknowledge with respect the Seneca Nation, known as the Great Hill People and keepers of the Western Door of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. We take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers on whose ancestral lands the University of Rochester currently resides in Rochester, New York.
All right, thank you for that. We'll now move into open forum. Are there any points of discussion for open forum? Senator Tulloch.
Just something super quickly, and I didn't get to put it on updates anywhere. But after the meeting, I will be sending out the interim report from the committee reviewing the racial conduct at the university. So just look out for that, and then you'll be able to let us know if you have any qualms or any other comments about the interim report, and I guess we can discuss at a later time. So yeah.
President Gorka.
Okay, I muted myself. Just to like kind of emphasize on Senator Tulloch's point, this is going to be extremely important to get feedback, especially from you all, because the committee in itself is like very administrative heavy. So getting feedback from students with unique perspectives, of course, is not going to be widely shared among the student body yet, but the report's going to be really, critical for conversations moving forward, especially because there's a lot of points on the student code of conduct that are still up for discussion. So kind of, getting that buy-in and to see what you all think about it would be really great for, making a change that's really tangible and effective. I yield.
All right, are there any other points of discussion for open forum? Seeing none, we can move into old business. Any questions or comments or concerns regarding CURT, coronavirus, COVID, winter stay, anything like that? All right, moving into senator updates. Any additional discussion or questions? Seeing none, we can go to legislative committees, academics, anything to add?
Yes, well, first of all, I hope you all had a good break. So we didn't have a meeting this last Sunday, but some of the continuing things we're doing in the committee, it's mostly, we are making a last push for the survey we've been sending recently. We really need like this testimonials, this information to apply them and send them, well, this semester and the next one, particularly the next one, on like preparing like a different kind of like perspective on workloads and like preventing burnout from the very beginning for the spring. So that's going to be very helpful. And the link is there. I'm still looking for a deputy, and for LAs, the process is still open. If you know anyone, please point them out to the committee members or to me. There's my email for that. And well, very briefly, recently with members, I've met with the heads of faculty departments and with President Gorka, with the speaker. I met with a couple of deans, and basically it's just, we're continuing to like push for the realities of students who are facing different housing needs in the international environments that are asynchronous, that are facing burnout, that are facing abuses in academic stuff. So if you have any point of interest towards these academic issues, please bring them to committee members, bring them to me. We'll continue to meet with administration and senior faculty, because we really need to, I think, to prepare for next semester for spring, and we need to begin with the right mindset instead of trying to correct on the run during the spring, right? We had the opportunity to do in the spring what we couldn't do for the fall. So we really need to take the chance, and these coming weeks, even after classes end, are gonna be key to prepare towards the next semester. That's all. I yield.
All right, any questions or discussion for academics? All right, ARC, anything to add?
Nope. Just hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving break.
All right, any questions or discussion for ARC? Seeing none, we'll go to appropriations. Zach, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
All right, any questions or discussion for SAC? All right, campus services.
Yeah, we don't have any updates this week, but if you have any questions, then you can feel free to text us.
Okay, any questions, discussion, comments for campus services? Seeing none, we can move to student life. Anything to add?
No, mostly just what's on there. So like, yeah, hope everyone had a great few days off. We didn't meet last week because we believe in holidays as well. And we meet on a Friday, and I wasn't about to make everyone meet on the Friday after Thanksgiving because that's just kind of rough. Yeah, still looking for a deputy chair. We'll talk about it in committee on Friday, but if you know anyone that's not in committee already that's interested, potentially just have them DM me on Instagram or email me if they would like. Yeah, that's it.
All right, any questions, comments, discussion for student life? Isaac, anything to add? Any questions, comments, discussion? All right, we can go to exec updates.
Okay, just to kind of like give some more context to some of the bullets. Anonymous feedback form as always. For the libraries, we had a meeting with Dean Mavernack, and we also got some more email correspondence so as of last week. So I'm gonna link in the chat in a moment the library hours for winter break. So if also anybody had any feedback that they heard whether like, you yourself are staying on campus for break, or other students about, criticisms about the libraries, but also winter stay in general, please let me know. Senator Hawk, I'm going to be reaching out to you to discuss the libraries, or not the libraries, the kitchens, and trying to open them up for the winter break stay. I had some informal conversations with students, and it's really rough this time around because I believe the pantry is still open, but the only dining facility that's open is the pit, and for very limited hours, and that's going to be for the next 2 months. So trying to see what we can do with, providing more options for students on campus for food. But anyways, Mark, if you wanted to talk a little bit more about, the meeting with Dean Mavernack and the libraries and kind of give updates on those 2 things we discussed, I'm going to pass it over to you real quick.
Sure, I can talk about that. We meet with the dean like monthly to try to discuss some of the things they're working on. And they want to work a lot with SA starting like the spring semester. So this is kind of looking ahead a little bit. They have 2 very big projects coming up. One of them is Studio X, and that's going to be in the basement of Carlson. And the other one's going to be kind of a complete rearrangement of Gleason. They did send us a lot of stuff like how it's going to look like and stuff like that. So I am going to be reaching out to some senators to get some feedback and kind of continue working with the libraries. Instead of like talking about Studio X and seeing, this is going to like drop a link in the chat that has like kind of the rendering of how it's going to look like. So if any senators like are interested and want to know more what the project is, reach out and we can kind of work together with the libraries. The Gleason stuff, I'm also gonna like reach out to some senators to get feedback after this meeting, probably like on Wednesday, because this project, like there's still some time for it. They're gonna work on it in spring and implement it over next summer. So there's still a lot for that. And before I kind of give it back to Justina, I'm gonna go ahead and give one more update. And it's about the flags. The main advisory committee is meeting for the first time this Friday. The undergraduate committee has met about 4 or 5 times so far. And I was able to kind of expand the main advisory committee's power to include more undergraduates in the meeting, because it was only like the co-chair last year, which was Jamal, and one other undergrad who was Gerardo. So we included it more. I just want to mention their names because other than me on the committee meeting on Friday, it's going to be Ezra Kruger, it's going to be Lily Hutton, Benjamin Schiffman, and Senator Fegler. So there's going to be a lot of undergraduate representation, which is good. So if any of the senators want to know more about what's happening in the project, we're going to have a lot more updates Friday afternoon. So expect updates next Monday that are like kind of more concrete. And I guess that's it from my part.
Awesome. I'm going to also just drop the link. I found it to how the libraries are going to be operating for the break. So if anybody's curious about that, it was shared already proactively with leadership. So you guys should all have already have had access as of like the last time we met. Cool. And then also to go off a little bit on the Gleason renovations. For any returners on the call, like I remember that we had discussions on this last year and we had suggestions brought up and forwarded over to Dean Mavernack and her team on what we wanted to see changed and improved. And it was delayed obviously because of COVID, potential construction. So yeah, we'll be looking forward to updates, but reach out if you have any specific questions. Okay, now on the policy 106, discrimination and harassment. So this one again is specifically for the university employees. The committee hasn't been meeting, the university-wide committee meeting. So I'm having a conversation with Susan and Mercedes from the Office of Equity and Inclusion to see kind of what the holdup is. As for the subgroup with Students Association representation, we met already once and we're planning on meeting again tomorrow, and I'm planning on sending out an agenda in the morning so we can structure the discussion a bit. But I'm also gonna be hopefully reaching out, actually I already reached out to Rachel, who's currently the intern for the Title IX office and also the head director of the Equal Opportunity Investigators, to kind of learn more about precedent now. She has yet to respond with like a time to meet. But if anybody from the committee that's on the call right now, or any senator in particular that might be interested in learning more about the process and like sexual misconduct, specifically as it applies to university employees, but also discrimination as it applies to university employees, reach out to me and you can potentially be a part of that conversation. I don't know how confidential it would be at this time. Cool. And then the E3 policy review. So I'm coming up and finalizing my report. This is again, the accreditation process for Greek life. If you're curious about seeing the final report, I'm gonna try to find a time to present it during Senate or maybe just like have it accessible to you all. But otherwise, if you want, and if Xander wants to drop a link in the chat, feel free to come to my presentation because this is my project for the leadership class, which for any underclassmen here, I highly recommend you take next fall. Yeah, it's been great. John DeSara has been really helpful. Yeah, retweet what Matt said in the chat. Awesome. And then, okay, Mark already did the Flag Advisory Committee and new initiatives. There's a longer list, but the one that I'm like currently just like doing more work with is as I'm hoping to meet with some people from UCC office to see what we can do about providing transportation for off-campus mental health services and kind of ease that burden of students having to Uber to and from, since of course like UCC has limited resources, so seeing what we can source from the local community, since UCC already kind of directs students if they're over capacity, so making that a little bit easier. I think that was it. To kind of also just like do one more point, and this is from my conversations, as Cesar mentioned in his updates, with Dean Culver and Dean Heinzelman. Just like summary points, they're gonna hopefully add a measure in the teacher evaluations that you get at the end of the semester to kind of address how they handled COVID and how accommodating they were, and as well as like their, how they handled the technology of it, so you can kind of review classes more specifically. Of course, still fill out that survey that Dean Runner sent to the student body if you haven't already on your overall experience with academic learning this semester, but hopefully that's gonna help to add some of the more like finite problems. And also just to kind of emphasize what Cesar said, there's been a lot of conversations from essay representation, but also students in the context of like Dean Runner's luncheons and just like other type of one-on-ones. So, the point's been made that academic burnout was really severe next semester. What can we improve moving forward? People are very open-minded. We did bring some suggestions forward, and feel free to reach out to me or Cesar if you're curious on some of the suggestions. But if you have any other kind of thoughts on things that can improve academically speaking, like tangible action plans, like to implement for the next semester, please reach out. Yeah, I mean, I know that they're going to have the mental wellness days next semester. Of course, they're not going to advertise it too far in advance, but that's already something that is being applied from the fall semester, and they're trying to see, what else can be done. But that's all my updates. So if anybody had any questions, feel free.
Senator Salimi?
I just had like a suggestion about the food insecurity on campus right now. I remember like from over the summer and like post shutdown in the spring, they did this thing where they partnered with Grubhub, where you could use your declining to buy food from off campus. Like I'm not sure how possible this will be right now, because I remember there were like exceptions, especially because of the like how serious and like I guess like because of like how serious like the pandemic was at the time, even though it's still like as serious in my opinion right now too. So maybe you could look into maybe pushing the school to do something like that for the next 2 months, because like I know I've heard complaints about food insecurity right now too, and like how things close way too early.
Thank you for that suggestion. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, in the past, like we used to do meal vouchers for winter stay. So wondering if something similar can be applied for off-campus food. Yeah, and like as Chair Thomas has said, no kitchen access, which, let's see what we can do with that, because 2 months is a long way to go with just pit food. Okay, perfect, thanks.
Yeah, I yield. That was all I had.
All right, any other discussion for President and VP updates? All right, seeing none. Alumni and advancement, anything to add? Any questions, discussion? All right, community engagement.
Hi everyone. So just a quick update in terms of what's going on in the community. So tomorrow is December 1st, which I didn't really realize because I thought that November had a 31st, but I guess it doesn't. So tomorrow is Rock the Day, which is run by United Way of Rochester. And it's basically just a way to donate to a bunch of different community organizations like 540 West Main, Black Physicians Network, his branches. There's so many more. I've linked the causes to support here if you want to see what causes you can donate to. I was going to work with PR, but seeing as it's tomorrow, I don't know how much we can get done. I literally got the email for it today, which is why I updated the agenda today, and I didn't know about it today, so until today. So yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that, and maybe I'll be able to work with Carrie Marr. We might be able to do the PR tonight, so we'll keep you, I guess you'll see about that. But yeah, just wanted to let you guys know that that's happening. Great way to help the community, especially in this time of pandemic craziness. And that's all. Thank you.
All right, any questions, comments, discussion for community engagement? Seeing none, we can go to PR. Anything to add? Questions, comments, discussion? All right, ACJC.
Hello, everyone. I hope you had a good break. I'm happy to greet you from sunny Pittsburgh. I wanted to give an opportunity to discuss the experimental guest policy that got rolled out last week. I can contextualize it if you want, but I also don't know a lot about it. This wasn't a decision that was made, as far as I'm aware, with consulting our working group. So this is not necessarily an SA win, but it's happened regardless. So if you've got questions, concerns, points of clarification, because I know it's sort of unclear based on the email that got sent out, I'm happy to collect them and hopefully get answers to them this week. I yield.
Senator Salimi.
Yeah, I was wondering, so like I know they are trying this out like as an experiment for the spring, but since there aren't a lot of people on campus right now, like I feel like the logistics of it are a bit off, because even if like people can bring in like 1 or 2 people in their dorms right now, there aren't a lot of people, but campus is going to densify a lot when we come back. So how are they going to like compare, like, I don't know, I guess like the logistics of like bringing in people right now when there's like not a lot of people, versus when more people will be on campus and they'll be able to like bring in more people, and it will result in like the dorms getting crowded, like more crowded than they are right now because of this. I don't know if that made sense, sorry.
Yeah, no, it does. I think that it's probably the best experiment we're going to get, because we have to make, the university has to make decisions with knowing things, and right now it doesn't know anything about the impacts that any change to the guest policy would look like. So this is a bit of a test run. I think, I can't speak for them entirely on this point, but this was sort of the original plan, was to run an experimental policy at the beginning of winter break and see if that failed, and if that failed, improve on it or remove it entirely. So it's more of a, and I again can't speak on their behalf on this point, this is entirely my conjecture, but it's to determine if it's possible to have something it'd still be taking a chance next semester if we continue going into it. But if it fails now, then it's certainly not going to work then either.
Okay, thank you. I yield to Micah.
Thanks.
Hi. So I'm aware that Connor already knows this, because so I only know the text of what the policy is from Connor when I asked him, but I just wanted to make the point that the text, at least as it was presented to me, seems pretty unclear about a variety of issues, and I think that it should be made a bit clearer to people about what specifically it means, because you know, when I was in SA, I was on the Elections and Rules Committee, and was very big into finding loopholes, and there were all sorts of loopholes available that I could name, like you can, it says, for example, that you can only have 1 guest per person in the suite, and that you can only have a certain number of people in the common room. So if you're in like a 4-person suite in Riverview, you can only have 4 people in the common room. Doesn't say anything about how many people you can have in your individual room. So you could theoretically pack 8 people in there. That's just one example, but there are all sorts of things that like weren't clarified there that I think just probably should be straightforward to students so that they know what they will and won't be punished for, if anything. That's it. I yield.
Senator Salimi?
Yeah, I yield, sorry.
Okay. Any additional questions or discussion for ACJC? All right. We can go to parliamentarian updates. Anything to add?
No, not much. Just that we have 2 bills up for debate and the motions. That's it.
All right. Any questions, comments, or discussion for parliamentarian, deputy parliamentarian? All right, seeing none. Speaker, deputy speaker updates. Matt, anything to add?
Nothing much, just that I helped in part contribute to the 3rd motion up for tonight, so we'll get into that later.
All right. Are there any other points of discussion or questions or comments or concerns for any other part of the agenda, even if it's passed?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, let me raise my hand, I guess.
Sure, Senator Liang.
Yeah, I was wondering if the university has an intention of vaccinating students once the COVID vaccine is out. If anyone knows that and sits on the CURT committee.
You can yield to President Gorka.
Yield to President Gorka.
There's been no discussions on it. I had like an informal conversation with President Mangelsdorf last week on the possibility of, making vaccines accessible specifically to U of R students as quickly as possible. And like there was some worries that she had off the record, like, ability to even produce those vaccines quick enough and who would be prioritized. I mean, we have a significant population in the med center that would have to most likely get vaccinated first. We did have conversations earlier in the semester about mandating the flu vaccine, and that never ended up panning out. So if that's like any inhibitor of like, where conversation's going, there's a lot of pros and cons to mandating vaccines. And as for specifically like COVID vaccine, just to kind of recap, like one, the potential of even getting that much supplies to be able to mandate it to everybody is kind of like, again, skeptical from what I've heard. But then two, like, our track record is, but again, nothing official. I think we're having one more student subcommittee meeting for CURT before the semester is over. I don't think we're gonna be meeting over break unless there's like significant updates with Rochester's classification, because I know we're currently in an orange zone. But I could bring that up and see if there's anything more tangible, because like right now leadership hasn't been updated on that, at least in any official capacity.
Sure. I mean, I think regardless of whether or not it is mandatory, I think it's probably good if students have access to the vaccine. Although, like, obviously you have like first responders first and then at-risk patients first. But I think eventually college dorms are also, quite a, not a great place for braving the pandemic. Yeah, so that's it. I yield.
All right. Any further discussion on any topics on the agenda of old business? All right, we can move into motions. Is there a motion? Senator Salimi.
Motion to approve the minutes from 16th November 2020. Is
there a second on that motion? Is there a second on that motion?
I second that motion.
Senator Liang.
Sorry, I second the motion.
Sorry, I couldn't raise my hand.
Oh, good. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we can move into a vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent on approving these minutes? All right, seeing and hearing none, motion passes. Is there a motion? Senator Salimi.
Motion to approve bill to modify senator classifications.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Ramirez.
I second.
All right, any discussion? Would the bill writers like to discuss?
I can discuss. So this was something that the committee worked on for more than several weeks, because we also prepared and did benchmarking. We had conversations with Laura when she attended meetings, and I tried to keep the Senate up to date within my updates about what the bill was intending to do. And so ultimately what it does is it takes, there's 3 senators reserved spots, like for each class year, and then the next 5 highest at-large senators, and then 4 senators who are first years. So this bill doesn't affect anything for first years. The remaining 14 senators, instead of 3 per class year and 5 at large, it's now 2 per class year and then 8 at large seats. And this was done to make it a little bit more competitive and representative of people who are actually the highest vote getters within elections. Besides that, there were some clarifications to the succession process for senators. I think that about sums it up, though.
All right, Senator Salimi.
I yield. I yield to Micah. Is he on the gallery?
Yeah.
Okay, I yield to Micah.
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I was going to a lot of the ENR meetings just as a normal everyday student who can attend those public meetings, but also as someone who was a former elections coordinator and saw several times sort of how those how elections work. And I would say that when they were looking at the possibilities for ways to change, ways to look at senators' constituencies, there were some possibilities that could have been much bigger that they could have pursued. And I would say this is a pretty minor change. And I would agree that that's a good thing. I don't think that the system right now with constituencies is that flawed. I think that really, I think that whether it's 2 versus 3 like class senators is a pretty small issue. And really this is something that is pretty straightforward and will, if I had to guess, make very little difference in anything at all. So I think that this is something that really should not be that objectionable. That's it. I yield.
Senator Salimi.
I yield.
All right, is there any other discussion? Reminder that this does change the bylaws, so it would need to sit on the table for a week or be overruled. Senator Hathaway.
Yeah, so I just had a question. So based on what Micah just said, that it's such a small little change, why did you guys feel like it was a necessary change? And I yield.
Do you yield or yield to Parliamentarian Sahin?
The Parliamentarian Sahin.
Thank you. So this was actually something that we were required to do within the Constitution, which is to reevaluate the senator classifications. And you are correct that that reevaluation doesn't mean that we have to change what the senator classifications already were. And we discussed a lot of changes we ultimately decided weren't worth it. But in terms of the number of seats for certain class years, we felt that in prior years, prior Senate terms, sometimes the third person who gets a class reserved seat on Senate is actually lower than some of the other runner-up candidates who would have gotten an at-large seat if it was an at-large seat. So I don't know if that makes sense, because let me try to just say it one more time. There's 3 seats that were reserved for the highest vote getters within each class year. Then the next 5 highest were, regardless of class year, those candidates become senators. So sometimes in the past, like if there was a vacancy that occurred and you would go down the list, a vacancy within the class reserved seat, then you would have to go down maybe 5 or so people to like the next highest person with like 5, 6 votes. Not they had 5 or 6 votes, and then offer them a seat, as opposed to someone else who had more votes and would arguably have more representation on Senate. Okay, there's a lot of people. I hope that made sense. I yield.
Senator Hathaway, do you yield?
I yield.
Senator Liang?
I would like to yield to Cesar.
Thank you very much. My question hinges on the fact that as an institution, we need to balance the way we are representative, right? Not only on the raw amount of votes, but also in like the different like sections of the student body that participate in the process. And my fear would be that if we give more weight to the overall votes and less to the class years, we are kind of giving a certain advantage to upperclassmen, to like junior and senior students, since they know more students, right? And they can mobilize more people, especially during like these elections and the pandemic. They'll probably have a sway compared to like incoming first year students who are like running for a position. For sophomores who are running for positions. And it just might change the weight of how things are represented in like in Senate. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but it might happen, and it might have some unprecedented influence in the way we have perspectives in this institution, the way we make decisions. I yield.
Yeah, so as a member of the committee that is proposing this bill, I just want to answer a couple of questions that are in the chat and also raised by the prior speaker. So like, it wouldn't affect first years. So the first years would vote for first years in the fall, as it always has been. This only changes for the rest of the class years, so sophomores, juniors, and seniors, to address the concern of, you know, the question of like, wouldn't this favor upperclassmen? So if you actually look at the data, it does not, for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that as students move up in the years, they give less of a shit about student government and vote less. Sorry, a clap. Yeah, so students vote less as the years go on, and not only that, but functionally, when we sit at the Senate table, if you are not a first year, it likely makes far less of a difference what year you are. You simply represent the student body as a whole. And I think experientially, it seems to be the case as well. And with that, I would like to yield to Micah Greenberg.
Yeah, so I was going to definitely say that sort of don't only think about who within an election gets put into a seat. I think it's also really important to think about who chooses to run for seats and how different changes that are made affect who chooses to run for seats. And that that's a really important part of what we were considering. And the other thing I wanted to say is sort of just in case you were wondering, some of the other things that I remember were like talked about, but for various reasons were for the most part seen as like too big of a change for us to even like, or for them to even consider. One example was like that looking at how outgoing seniors can vote in spring elections when they're not going to like be around for that those people actually being in office, and possibly changing that. There was a little discussion, I think, of either changing it to fully at-large seats or fully class seats. Neither of those were chosen. And then the other thing was sort of, just as a background, I sort of lean towards fully at-large because if you get more votes, I would say you probably deserve to be elected, but that's just me. And then the other thing, which was definitely thrown out pretty quickly, was the idea of possibly having upperclassmen be able to vote in first-year elections, but only have first years be able to run in first-year elections. So yeah, but that's it. I yield.
Senator Liang, do you yield?
Yes, I do.
Senator Ramirez?
Some of my concerns were addressed, so I yield.
Senator Rogers?
Yeah, I think essentially Liang covered most of the time. Well, I was going to say it first. I feel like majority of senators are not really upclassmen. Does give advantage to upclassmen. You know, most senators are sophomores because sophomores are just getting very involved. I don't know why, it just really do. Yeah, definitely echo what Senator Yang said, that there's no big issue with that. So yeah, I yield.
Senator Feiglin?
Yeah, I think most of my earlier concerns were already addressed. I do want to address the comment in the chat though, that less candidates in each class would mean an easier election for candidates when you have more reserved seats for a particular class. So it makes it more competitive by limiting those seats, which is what I think this specific modification was trying to address. I yield.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Senator Dillingham.
I think that was actually a really great clarifying point, Senator Feiglin, because I was like going back and forth in my head trying to think about, right, like if you have fewer candidates running for a given class year, does that make it easier or harder to win? And I guess in the old way where you have reserved seats, it would make it easier for upperclassmen. So this bill would actually kind of balance it out, right? Because you would have more at large. The other thing is just kind of like, I know I was talking with some of the first year senators, and a concern is that, right, so we won't be first years next year. And so there's like a certain amount of seats set aside for first years, and then there won't be for sophomores, right? And so we're concerned that like it could be harder. And it seems like the class of 2023, you current sophomores like have a ton of senators, like good for you guys for being really engaged. But I understand that from a self-interest standpoint, it makes sense to want to have those reserved three seats instead of 2 for us next year. But moving beyond like the self-interest standpoint, I just think that on the merits, senators really act as at-large senators, and we work to do what's good for students. Like I never stop and go, oh, I care only about first years just because I represent them. And so I think on principle, I have to support this bill because it is just arbitrary to draw lines between the different class years. It's not like this is class council, right, where we're programming for specific class years.
Do you yield?
Yes.
Senator Liverpool?
Sorry, I was muted. Hi. Yeah, I am also a part of the committee, and I have to preface what I'm about to say with that this bill is very well written. and we spent a lot of time working on it. And I think that in part it will do a lot to remove complications from understanding the jurisdiction of senators. Blaine, I think you iterated that well. Although I could not endorse this bill myself because of the succession process. Again, I think that Typhoon did a really good job of clarifying what was already existing in the bylaws, but I personally think that if we're going to evaluate and reevaluate this process, I just think that there's a better way to go about succession. And to me, that is going straight to special elections rather than having an entirely complicated succession process. But that's just me. Again, I think that this bill will do a lot, but I would personally support it if it was split into two. Yeah, I yield. To Senator Sahin, Senator, sorry, Typhoon, parliamentarian.
No, that's all good. So yeah, I think I said most of what I wanted to within the chat, but then specifically on your point about the succession process. So I think just to elaborate a little bit, I think that your disagreement, right, was that an eligible person, like if there's a vacancy that occurs on Senate, then you go down the list of like, all right, who's the next highest vote getter? And your, I think, preference was to have a special election for each vacancy. Was that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we did talk about that in our most recent committee meeting. Unfortunately, though, that wasn't really a discussion that we had within the other meetings about senator classifications. It was only recently brought up. I intend to still ask Laura, but in terms of the status quo being maintained for the succession process, it still is being maintained. And there was some discussion whether a special election would involve lots of resources and whether or not it would still be representative just to go down the most recent election and say, all right, who's the next highest vote getter? So I just wanted to clarify for people a little bit about what that disagreement was. All right, I yield.
Do I still have time?
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that Typhoon had the opportunity to say that, because yes, we did have this discussion in a committee. We've, again, been working on this for so long, but I just wanted to have a different perspective on the table for people who might not have been able to read through the entire thing, or who may be just like very set on a specific part of the bill. I don't know. I just wanted to give my own little perspective, but more can come out of this if we approve it the way that it is. But again, just wanted to throw in my 2 cents.
Do you yield?
Sorry, to Blaine's point, I think that that's another really great question for discussion, and that's what makes this particular part of the bill a little more complicated than it can be, but there are just many different ways to think about succession, and representation and turnout would be one of those things to consider. I yield.
All right, Senator Liang.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just have a point of inquiry or just a general question. So the motion says to approve, but we must table the bill because it changes the bylaws. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so
you would either need to overrule the bylaws or, which I would not recommend, or to table it. Yes.
okay, so when the bill is tabled, can changes still be made to it?
Yes.
Okay, so if we were to say to vote to table the bill, and then while the bill is still tabled, have the discussion of whether we should have a special election or not instead of the secession plan, that would be allowed. And then the bill we would be voting on next session or the session after that, we would then be looking at the modified version of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes. And if
Okay,
you want
cool.
to yield to Parliamentarian Sahin, I'm sure he'll describe it more.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, that's possible. I would note that I think that what Devon was saying about surveying students actually seems to be reasonable, that this is something about how senator seats should be filled. So right now, this bill, it doesn't change anything in the status quo for the succession process. It only makes it more clear so that it's not as prone to misinterpretation. I think that these are good conversations to have. It might not be possible within 1 week to conduct all that surveying and then make that decision. That being said, I have a meeting with Laura, the SA advisor, this upcoming Thursday, and I'm definitely planning to have a conversation with her about that. I yield.
I yield to Chief Justice Nagata.
Hi, everyone. I think that, well, first of all, thank you, Senator Liang, for yielding to me. But I think that people are getting into really interesting conversations and really important conversations about the nature of representation. But I want to address sort of just a little bit of history about classification in general. I think Parliamentarian Sahin can also speak to this. But long story short, I'm going to be oversimplifying. Senators used to be apportioned by their dorm location. And so there was a change made to that created this new system that we're currently operating under. That decision was made, I believe, through the Commission to Review the Essay, which is co-chaired by Dean Burns and a member of leadership generally. I believe that required a fair amount of public engagement to do. Senator Dillingham, that's exactly what it was. And so it went, that's sort of the origin of our current system. And so I believe it was also floated as an idea for an ongoing topic for the Commission to Review the Essay, but the Commission to Review the Essay is not functioning this year as a result of COVID. So that's sort of what I understand to be the situation, but I strongly encourage people to consult the parliamentarian to ask any of those things. Thanks, I yield.
You still have the floor. Do you yield?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'll just ask this for the record. So Senator Liverpool, was your suggestion then to split the bill into two bills, where one is at large and like class senators, which is what we discussed earlier, and two is secession? Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Alexander, can I respond?
Yeah, you can answer. Yeah.
Okay. I think that it could be easiest that way because again, this bill is so well written and the classifications does a lot for clarity and understanding. So I think it could be helpful to, as we are already assessing classifications and succession, to split it and evaluate them separately and go about assessing the sentiments of our constituents about who fills the seats that represent them, and do something with the bill. But I'm not necessarily proposing that. I'm just saying that it could be a good idea.
Senator Liang.
I yield.
Yeah, cool. I also think that seems to be a great idea that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I yield.
Senator Dillingham.
I yield.
Senator Rogers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some of my points were already addressed. Like, I definitely feel like this idea of revising the succession process should be whole. I think should take some due diligence to survey and contacting the constituents, since they are the ones who select us. They're the ones who picked us to survey them. Represent them. Excuse me. Then I think this should be something shouldn't be done like almost towards the last Senate meeting of the semester, rather than take our time and reach out thoroughly next semester. I feel like this is something that shouldn't be rushed or shouldn't be added on in a week, because it doesn't affect they should have the complete and overall say what happens, and not us, because we are the representatives. So at some level of bias, I would think I would say I think I'd be more appropriate if we have it next semester. But again, most of my comments were already said, so I don't want to repeat what's been said already. So I yield.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Are there any motions? Reminder that there does at least need to be one more motion. Senator Liang.
Motion to table the bill to modify senator classifications.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Salimi.
I second the motion.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion to table? All right, seeing no discussion, we'll move into a vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent on tabling this bill? Seeing and hearing no dissent, motion passes. It is tabled. As a reminder, the bill can change between a week or 2 weeks. There's no time limit for tabling, so it could be pulled at any future Senate meeting. Is there a motion? Senator Salimi.
Motion to approve bill to clarify rules for serving as a proxy or in multiple official positions.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang.
Seconded.
All right. Same thing. The bill sponsors or co-sponsors.
I can go. So this is something that we've been working on probably as long as senator classifications on and off. And there's a few things that are going on here. So one thing that's being clarified is if an individual is serving as a proxy, just clarifying that, they're taking over the official capacity of someone else. So for example, like Alexander's proxy, if he's absent, is the deputy speaker, and the deputy speaker would then lead the meeting if Alexander were ever absent. So there were some clarifications there. Another thing was if someone is approved within multiple official positions. So this would primarily be important towards Senate committees where, if a senator was approved as a, general member of that committee and then subsequently approved as a committee chair, this clarifies that, that committee chair is no longer like a general member. They're the chair of that committee. And that's what this attempts to do. There were also some other clarifications because the bylaws really didn't have any kind of references towards deputy chairs, or not that many anyway, specifically regarding to how deputy chairs are appointed, the resignation or removal of deputy chairs, the process for that. And there was also a lack of just roles and responsibilities for the chief of staff position. This is something that Matt actually brought up, and so kudos to him. And so, and also the chief of staff isn't even listed as one of the secretaries, but it is within the executive PPM. So this bill also fixes that. And I think that summarizes it. But again, I'm always happy to answer questions.
All right. Is there any further discussion? Any further discussion? Senator Tulloch.
I yield to Micah.
Hi, so just a really quick thing. I have not read the bill. I knew of this project way early in advance, but I haven't been attending ENR for the past couple of weeks. I sort of just want to make sure that that the chief of staff thing is handled well, just because we have had issues in the past where there's sort of a debate where chief of staff acts often as kind of a third member of the sort of executive leadership team, and almost like a second vice president to an extent, or it has been in past years sometimes, depending on the group. And so there have been times when sort of the chief of staff's role is kind of not that well defined, in a way that they're told that they can sort of have any tasks delegated to them, and sort of just making sure that it's what things can be delegated to them and what can't, especially powers that are given to the executive. And this was an issue in a past year, for sure. That was debated last year for sure. So yeah, that's it. I yield.
Senator Tulloch.
I yield.
All right. Any further discussion? Senator Rogers.
I yield to parliamentarian Shaheen.
Yeah, thank you. I was also just typing the chat. Micah, I'll reach out to you about that. What we did was we mostly just took what the responsibilities of the chief of staff who were within the executive PPM, and then we kind of just put that within the bylaws. But I'll reach out to you to make sure that whatever problem did occur in a prior year that perhaps I wasn't aware of, that we can address that. Thanks. I yield.
Senator Rogers.
Hey.
All right. Is there any further discussion? I believe this also changes the bylaws. So again, the same process for tabling or overruling the bylaws would need to happen. Senator Liang.
Motion to table 130.
All right, I'll take that as a motion to table the bill to clarify rules for serving as a proxy or in multiple official positions. Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Is that Senator Rogers?
Yes.
All right, is there any discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none, we can vote by unanimous consent. Is there any dissent on tabling this motion? Seeing and hearing none, motion passes. It is tabled. Is there a motion? Senator Salimi.
A motion to adjourn.
Is there a second on that motion? Senator Liang.
Seconded.
All right, is there any dissent on the motion to adjourn? Seeing and hearing none, we are adjourned.